Have you felt it too? Let's dive right into this explainer and validate that weird, almost unshakable collective feeling you've likely been carrying around, that profound sense of just being completely stuck since the pandemic. If you've been wondering why reality feels, well, a little bit off lately, you're absolutely not alone. Today, we're going to dig into the actual data to figure out exactly why. Seriously, why does the world feel so entirely different after 2020? Our environment, our lifestyle, literally everything dramatically changed. But while we were all busy just trying to survive a global crisis, we never really noticed the shift happening in the background. Now, those changes feel different. It's like we are suddenly stuck in this bizarre holding pattern. All these invisible algorithmic changes quietly took place right under our noses. What are the subtle differences we noticed but ultimately just kind of ignored? And what else do we have to face now? Researchers investigating our new pandemic habits hit on this profound truth. They noted that while screens connect us to the world, disconnecting occasionally is what connects us to ourselves. And honestly, over the last few years, we completely lost the ability to disconnect. So let's start by unpacking the post-2020 shift. The pandemic basically acted as a massive catalyst for an unseen technological rewiring of society. Think of it like a giant domino effect. In 2020, lockdowns drove unprecedented screen time. I mean, screens were literally our only safe windows to the outside. By 2021, those temporary digital survival habits calcified. They became permanent. Then in 2022, social media algorithms silently capitalized on our growing mental fatigue, perfectly optimizing for mindless scrolling. And by 2023, widespread digital apathy and active news avoidance took a massive firm hold on us. Which brings us right to our next major piece of the puzzle, the digital fatigue epidemic. We finally have a concrete scientific term to give a name to that massive cognitive overload and physical discomfort you've probably been feeling: digital fatigue. It's defined as a condition characterized by mental, emotional, and physical exhaustion caused by excessive screen exposure and continuous online participation. It's not just feeling a bit sleepy, it is a total systemic drain on your brain's resources. And the real physiological toll of our new digital environment is intense. We are talking about cognitive overload from just non-stop stimuli, reduced focus, and severe concentration problems, completely disrupted sleep quality, skyrocketing anxiety and depressive symptoms, even diminished emotional stability. Researchers are finding this is hitting Generation Z particularly hard. But let's be real, we are all feeling these effects in our day-to-day lives. Just wrap your head around this number: 8. That is the staggering number of hours per day Gen Z often spends on digital devices. Whether it's for school, work, or socializing, it pushes their cognitive load to the absolute breaking point. That's essentially a full-time job of just staring at screens. And when an entire population is that thoroughly exhausted, well, their behavior changes completely. Okay, so how did the platforms react to all this exhaustion? Let's talk about algorithms and echo chambers. A really fascinating recent study on Generation Z's media literacy highlighted this exact new era of fast-paced, apathetic consumption. One participant basically hit the nail on the head, admitting, because with TikTok, a lot of the times you're just scrolling. You'll see that, but you're not going to follow up. We are literally too tired to verify facts anymore. We just scroll. And the crazy thing is, users are actively trying to defend themselves. Look at these Gen Z coping mechanisms. They intentionally don't engage with polarizing content. They fast scroll just to prevent the algorithm from tracking their interests. They actively avoid the For You page altogether. And they rely entirely on super narrow, pre-selected followings. Now, these filtering behaviors are absolutely meant to protect their peace, but they inadvertently create massive, impenetrable filter bubbles. And when you zoom out to look at the macro effect of those individual choices, the data from the Reuters Institute is wild. It shows what audiences actually pay attention to across different networks. On platforms like TikTok, the absolute largest proportion of attention goes straight to fun news. These networks prioritizing engaging, entertaining creators over traditional journalism, which fundamentally alters what captures our society's attention. This entire dynamic has completely fractured the public into two very distinct camps. On one side, we have a shrinking group of active, often highly partisan news participators. They're down to about 22% globally. On the other side, we have a massive, rapidly growing majority of news avoiders, sitting at around 47%. They feel so overwhelmed by the toxic atmosphere that they're either seeking exclusively positive, solutions-based content or just retreating into private group chats. And for the people who actually did stay politically active online during the pandemic, the walls only grew higher.
An impartial case study tracking COVID-19 discourse found that both left-leaning and right-leaning echo chambers formed incredibly fast. However, the data revealed that right-leaning networks were far more densely connected within their own bubble and isolated from the rest of the discourse, which is just a fascinating sociological phenomenon driven entirely by algorithmic sorting.
All right, let's step outside our screens for a second and dive into the real-world impact, the information desert. To put this into perspective, we need to talk about the number 360. That is exactly how many local newspapers vanished entirely in the U.S. between late 2019 and May 2022. While we were all locked inside, obsessing over national trending topics, massive news deserts were quietly forming right in our own backyards. It's honestly like a devastating chain reaction, directly connecting dying local media to our intensely divided political landscape. First, a local paper goes under. Second, national, algorithm-driven, partisan news rushes in to fill that void. Third, citizens completely lose practical knowledge of what's happening in their state and local politics. And finally, voting behavior becomes heavily polarized, driven entirely by national party labels instead of actual local issues. So, what is the ultimate result of losing our local watchdogs and living inside these tight algorithmic bubbles? Well, overall, global trust in the news has plummeted to a mere 40%, according to the Reuters Institute. The global trust deficit is absolutely massive right now. This steep downward path completely reverses any temporary gains in trust that were made during the height of the pandemic, back when people were incredibly desperate for reliable health information. And if we look specifically at the United States, reports show exactly when the floor fell out. Distrust hit a 40-year record low right in 2020. Literally the exact same year our screens completely took over our lives and our digital fatigue set in. The timeline of these massive digital shifts aligns perfectly with our loss of collective trust. It's a real eye-opener. So, after taking all of this in, where do we actually go from here? Well, these are the massive systemic challenges we completely missed while we were locked down and scrolling away. To get unstuck, we have to actively navigate this new post-truth era where emotional content usually beats out facts. We need to overcome our deep skepticism of personalized algorithms by actually demanding better systems. We absolutely must defend journalists from coordinated harassment so they aren't forced into self-censorship just to stay safe. And we urgently need to rebuild our local information ecosystems. Ultimately, the only real way out of this maze is digital literacy. We have to genuinely understand how platform mechanisms operate. We need to recognize the datafication, the commodification, and the algorithmic selection happening the second we open an app. Once you understand that these systems are literally designed from the ground up to provoke a reaction from you so you consume more, you can finally start to break the cycle of apathy. The world feels different because the very architecture of how we interact was entirely rebuilt without our conscious permission. But now you see the walls. So I want to leave you with this one question to think about. Now that you can see the invisible architecture around you, how will you reclaim your digital diet? It might just be time to look up from the screen, reconnect with the real world outside your window, and take your attention back. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. I'll catch you next time.